Okay, I think we're recording. Hello and welcome. My name is Dillon, or as most people like to call me, Buck. Today I'm here seeking an investor with a minority interest in a business startup. This business being Buckshot Shooting Range, which is a gun store slash shooting range that's meant to accommodate every kind of gun enthusiast from beginner to expert. This presentation is going to be built around industry data from sources like IBIS, Robert Morris, and Dun & Bradstreet. And kind of with those, I've created a startup strategy that's backed by location demographics, industry averages, and personal testimonies of multiple industry representatives in order to create something that's rock solid for your judging today. So with that in mind, we can launch into our background first. First things first, where did Buckshot Shooting Range come from? More specifically, the name. Well, as I referred to on the previous slide, everyone at my university, from the students all the way up to the president of the university, they call me Buck. It's my nickname, more like a second name when I'm on campus. And so when I was looking for a company name, I wanted something that was marketable not only to the business, but also to me as an individual, as the owner. And so that was the origin of Buckshot Shooting Range, really. But this leads to the question, Buck, what gives you the authority, the credibility to create a business plan for shooting ranges that sells and deals with guns on a daily basis? And in answer to that question, I want to say that first, I'm federally trained in handgun combat arms. I also have 6 years of firearm appraisal experience, 3 years of actual buying experience, and my shooting experience includes shotgun trap shooting, long-range precision, which is my personal favorite, and even varmint hunting, a lot of different kinds of hunting, really. Firearms have been a part of my life since I was old enough to hold a rifle, but growing up, the real thing that I was lacking was a safe place to practice. All of the land was owned, and private shooting ranges required membership fees that were hundreds of dollars. The general public of my hometown shared in this issue. They didn't have a safe place to learn and practice with firearms, which is really where Buckshot first came to me as an idea. All that information, all that experience comes together in one person, one owner, to fulfill the requirements needed to run a business like this. The location, which we're going to talk about more in the marketing portion of the presentation, in Tonganoxie, Kansas, perfect for the surrounding area to come and learn and practice with firearms safely. So with that in mind, moving forward, how is this presentation going to be given? First, we're going to start with the financial side of things because the assumptions and numbers given by the financials are going to provide more background and support for the other parts of the presentation. Marketing and logistical operations, for example, both have numbers in the financials that give them weight, so that the methods behind this business plan have authenticity rather than being more of a what-if scenario. And with that being said, the detailed financials in the appendices of the written entry will be referred to numerous times as the operations, marketing, and strategic parts of this plan are discussed. And with that, we can head into our first talking point, which is the financials and logistics. We're going to start here with pointing out 3 of the major revenue streams that we need to discuss in order to properly evaluate the financials and logistics. As after all, there's more to Buckshot than just our open to the public 1,000-yard shooting range. The first thing I'd like to point out is the difference between new and used firearms. The difference here is actually going to come in the form of a margin, the profit margin, which favors the used guns with a margin of 25 to 30%, compared with the slimmer margin of new firearms, which is 4 to 8%. Both of those percentages actually come from Dun & Bradstreet, which is an industry outlook database. One of the observations that they made was that used firearms were a substitute product of firearms dealers. So by having both kinds of products available at Buckshot, we're going to be able to take advantage of selling substitute products that would cost us otherwise. Some of the firearms we expect to sell at Buckshot, we expect to go straight to the shooting range and to be used ammunition purchased at Buckshot for just such purposes. This adds to the potential revenue that can be stacked on top of initial purchases of guns, new or used. Similarly, attachments for those firearms are going to be thrown into the same situation. And overall, the process of buying and selling used firearms is actually going to really complement to Buckshot's ability to be profitable in the long run, just like selling new firearms will be the backbone of the operations within the business. The next thing to point out is membership sales, actually, the second revenue stream. This is below the services section of the revenue schedule. Not only will this be a key metric for consumer loyalty, but it's also going to provide a 95 to 98% profit margin. since the only cost to provide that service is to have the paperwork on file and to distribute the membership badge. This creates a large gap between revenues and cost of goods sold, as you can see when you compare totals from both financial documents. A question that could be asked regarding this topic is, Buck, 95, 98% doesn't seem right. Are you missing anything in your cost of goods sold in this category? The answer to this question is no, and that's because all other expenses that might be able to be tied back to this revenue stream are actually considered operating expenses rather. If this service was offered versus if this service was not offered, those expenses would still be there, and therefore they're part of our operations rather than being part of the cost of goods sold. And that kind of wraps up, membership sales in a nutshell. With that being said, we can move into our third major revenue stream, which is the instructional courses, which I'm extremely excited about. A common saying in the gun world is that the most undersold attachment for any firearm is the training to use it properly. And so Buckshot plans to have multiple kinds of instructional courses, including ladies handgun protection, long range precision, where they'll be shooting on our 1,000-yard shooting range, and introduction classes for different types of firearms. The education aspect is one that Buckshot has to capitalize on in order to create new customers and keep our existing ones. It's also part of Buckshot's mission to further educate people on the proper use of firearms. And it's that aspect of education in itself that's meant to take the mystery and misinformation out of guns, which is a cause of a lot of uncomfortable feelings when the topic comes up in discussion with a lot of people. This revenue stream is a personal favorite of mine, actually, because the diversity of the classes available and potential for people to actually learn something and be educated with their guns. And so with that in mind, that wraps up the three major revenue streams I wanted to take a look at. And now we're going to shift towards the seasonal expectations for the business. Because the glaring observation within Buckshot's income statement is that it's divided into a busy and slow season. The numbers presented, I will say the numbers presented in the income statement itself represent one single month of income rather than the whole season. It's not the whole season, it's just 1 month of numbers. And since we're talking about an outdoor range, people are expected less likely to go out and shoot if it's freezing. Late spring to early fall is expected to be Buckshot's busy season as families look for activities to do during the summer months, and the weather is going to be more favorable as well. Late fall to early spring, though, is expected to have lower numbers in range usage due to the colder weather. But the good part about this is that we are expected to see an increase in purchases made in the store in the form of firearm sales and overall retail sales. This is actually an industry trend gathered from IBIS and the ATF as background checks for firearms increased around December and March. March seems strange to me until I talked about it with an industry representative, an owner of a gun shop. And we found out it was because of tax season being in full swing. People decided to spend their tax money on firearms. December is self-explanatory with people wanting to buy guns, attachments, even ammunition for their loved ones for Christmas. But the other slightly busier month during the slow season is expected to be October due to the Kansas deer hunting season. The aspect that Buckshot accommodates every kind of shooter means that the average hunter will be able to adjust their hunting rifle at the range. And so discussing this slow season and the monthly fluctuations, these can actually be seen in a better light in the Appendix 4 of the written entry with the bi-month cash flow projections for the first year of operation. That does have Buckshot opening in June. And so the last thing we want to take a look at with our financials is the ratios and margins within the business's financial documents, because this is going to be a key element in comparing ourselves to industry standards. Looking at the income statement, the average net profit margin between the two seasons is 23.74%, which is largely contributed by the gap in revenue and cost of goods sold found in the services side of operating. When looking at industry averages through Robert Morris and other industry outlook database, Buckshot actually lands just slightly above average of the industry business. This was found using the quick and current ratios of Buckshot and then comparing those same ratios provided by Robert Morris. And having those ratios so close to industry averages not only justifies the numbers presented in the financial documents, but also places Buckshot slightly above average in the overall industry. This is the perfect representation of where we want to be as a business and becoming a benchmark in the industry, which the same source has actually forecasted potential industry expansion within the next 5 to 7 years within the firearms industry. And so that kind of wraps up the financials and logistics side of things. And with that in mind, we can move into our marketing operations. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the strategic location itself for the shooting range in Tonganoxie, Kansas. As you can see from the picture on the right, Tonganoxie is surrounded by a heavily populated area, a belt, if you would, that includes Kansas City, Topeka, Lawrence, uh, and the expectation for buckshot is to target our main demographic within a 40-mile radius of the facility itself. And as you can see from Appendix 1, this is going to include all the previous cities that I just mentioned, as well as Johnson County, which is the wealthiest county in Kansas, as well as one of the most densely populated. It's also going to include Leavenworth up north there too. Can't forget Leavenworth. So how are our target market? How is our target market going to be segmented? Three different ways, really: age, use, and experience or ownership. Apologies. Starting with age, the target market is going to be split up in between age groups of 18 to 30 and 45 to 60 and above. With this younger target demographic most likely going to go towards instructional courses, educational content, and some of the gun shopping, while the older demographic is most likely going to take part in membership sales, retail sales, and a large part of the firearm sales. The second demographic we talked about was the usage or the experience level. Buckshot wants to attract people who have one, never shot before, but they want to. Two, people who sometimes shoot, but not that often. And three, the people who want to shoot as often as they can during the week, on the weekend, anytime, any free time they're at the range. We want to target all three kinds of those people and everything in between. And that's part of our target market as well. The third demographic that we use is ownership, which the statistic found is that 32% of the people in Kansas own a firearm. And so that 32% of the general population is part of our initial target market and who we want to bring into the doors. And with that kind of wraps up our target market and how we break that down into the age, use, and ownership, and how we're going to target those with our marketing channels, which is going to include I-70 and radio stations. I-70 billboards, more specifically. Being so close to that really big highway makes it easier to advertise on a busy interstate, so close to the facility. But also Kansas City radio is also largely popular in that area. Not only are these radio stations popular, but they're also pro-gun, which really plays into Buckshot's favor when looking for airtime. If the right stations are targeted, the advertising can reach a large portion of our target market within the Kansas City area. I'm a little biased. I grew up in the area, and so this is most definitely going to be 101 The Fox, which is a classic rock cumulus station. They have the audience that really matches with our target market the most, and going through them is going to benefit the company the most. The other marketing channel that Buckshot plans on using is actually one I'm really excited about. Buckshot wants to utilize free social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to reach our target market. Since all these mentioned accounts are free, it's going to be a really cost-effective way of reaching our target market. YouTube has a great potential to advertise for the company, but also to become a revenue stream of its own in the form of ad revenue. Everything from educational content, promotional information, and opportunities for adding value can be uploaded to this channel that can be watched by millions of people. This is going to be a great tool in reaching national audiences and becoming an attraction for gun enthusiasts all over the country. Some firearm companies have actually already started using this platform by gaining the attention of gun enthusiasts through videos, and then linking those videos back to the company website where the viewer can turn into a potential customer. Excuse me. Having that marketing channel along with the other social media platforms and the more traditional platforms is going to be massive in trying to capture the target market numbers that we're seeking. But a question could come from this, what kind of message, Buck? What do you want to send down your marketing channels to your target market? What kind of message? And a good way to answer this question is to look at one of the first marketing plans that will be needed in order to capture a strong start for when the business opens. And that plan is we plan on partnering with our suppliers in order to create a raffle for customers to take part in. The month before opening, the message to our customers will be that Buckshot accepts beginner shooters, expert marksmen, everyone in between, people who want to dip their toe in the world of firearms, people who have been in it for years. And in order to reinforce that, we'll encourage them to come visit Buckshot by offering one free raffle ticket per customer to place into a handful of prize baskets that are going to be raffled off at the end of the first month of operation. Some examples of these baskets include a company merchandise basket, a free lesson, even a gun raffle. Having those different degrees of baskets is going to allow every kind of shooter to take part in the activity, since someone who wants to visit and start learning about guns on their first visit might not want to try to win a rifle in a raffle. This opening day marketing plan is meant for customers to come see the facility and to take part in an interactive event filled with supplier representatives and Buckshot staff. And I think that perfectly embodies the message that we want to send down our marketing channels and the mission that Buckshot has in its goal with firearms and the general public. And I think that really wraps up marketing operations quite well. So since that wraps the marketing operations up, we can move into our conclusion. The first thing I want to talk about with concluding this presentation is the initial investment, the investment side of things. The written entry states that I am asking for a $500,000 investment in exchange for a 15% equity stake within Buckshot shooting range. What that translates to, with the numbers given in the income statement, is an income monthly of $10,341 to you, the investor. After 60 months, this translates into $620,460, which means you get your $500,000 back, and by this time you've already made $120,000 on top of it. $120,000, that is. After 120 months, this translates into $1.24 million. And so really, what justifies the $500,000 investment? And the answer to that is this presentation, this written entry. It has industry backing from 3 different industry databases, as well as content from interviews and multiple businesses and companies that share some of the same operations as Buckshot would. I only have 20 minutes, unfortunately, and that might not be enough time for me to cover everything needed, but with the evidence given in this presentation, I can honestly say that Buckshot shooting range is the business for you and your investment. Not only does the industry data provide adequate evidence for potential success and expansion, but it's also going to provide a solution to a large problem for the gun enthusiasts in the Midwest by giving them a safe and cost-effective way of learning and practicing with guns, especially with that 1,000-yard shooting range. It's going to allow people a challenge and come visit, but it's also going to be a center for Midwestern gun safety and education, which is really the goal. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'd like to thank you for your time. I wish I could answer questions, but unfortunately, this presentation method doesn't allow me to do so. So I will leave it at that. Thank you again, and I hope you have a good day.